So there's been an update in the Hoyoverse versus SAG-AFTRA VA strike situation. Recently, Paperback Boy did an interview with Corinna Butker, who is Paimon's English VA, where she very surprisingly decided to sit down with a YouTuber who has been critical of all of her decisions involving this whole strike, and just answer some questions and explain her side of the story about things. And in that interview, she revealed to Paperback Boy that she was not going to be voicing Paimon anymore, because after the English voice actor for Kinich was recast by Jacob Takanashi, she gave Hoyoverse an ultimatum, basically saying that if they didn't become union, she was not going to be returning to voicing Paimon in Genshin Impact.
So are there any new major roles coming up for you soon, or is it still just going to be Paimon? I know you're not voicing Paimon at the moment, but is there any new roles that you have coming up?
Correct. After Jacob was replaced, I sent notice to Hoyo saying that I would no longer voice Paimon until they became union, so they'll probably just replace me.
So this was very welcome news for a lot of people, including myself. Corinna Butker will no longer be voicing Paimon, which means that all of the Genshin Impact players out there that happen to enjoy listening to the game in English will be able to have somebody voicing the character, and another voice actor out there who is maybe more deserving of the role will be able to voice Paimon. So after this interview went up, Corinna's gone back to her old ways. She's been lying on social media about the strike, trying to paint Paperback Boy in a bad light, basically trying to make it seem like Paperback Boy was attempting to make her look bad in the interview. She says in this tweet, "I misspoke in the interview as I was really nervous. I had noticed this after the interview and asked the YouTuber to put an asterisk on the video explaining this, and he told me he would. I guess he didn't." Which is false, by the way. Paperback Boy put in the pinned comment of the video that the remark about Jacob being replaced was a misquote. Corinna meant when John was replaced. And I'm pretty sure everybody understood that was a misquote anyway, because John was the guy that was previously voicing Kinich. Jacob Takanashi was the one that replaced him, and when Jacob Takanashi announced that he was going to be the new voice of Kinich, he was attacked by a bunch of SAG-AFTRA goons, including Corinna. You know, because a guy in Japan who needs to make money and has a kid to feed should care at all about a strike going on with SAG-AFTRA voice actors over in the United States, and decide that he doesn't need to make money because they're going to be very, very mad if he takes this role that's been left open. And if you're wondering, no, Paimon's VA did not apologize for that. She actually defended her actions in dogpiling Jacob Takanashi with all the other VAs that had an issue with him taking that recast role.
So why was Jacob Takanashi getting the role as Kinich received so poorly by the other voice actors?
The reason why is because in the United States, obviously actors stick together, and actors, I remember being a very young actor working in theater and being told, you never take the role of a striking actor. You know, you do not do that. That is not okay. It's not cool. But even further than that, in the United States, we have a strong history of sticking by our fellow workers and not taking the jobs of those that are striking. And you cannot like the way that I went about it. That is 100% valid. You're very welcome to have that opinion. But at the end of the day, it has been a strong history that when a worker takes the job of a striking actor, you call them out.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what you're supposed to do.
She sees it as crossing the picket line to go voice this character that's been unvoiced for a long time, and it's wrong to take a role from a striking VA, which is a hilarious sentiment for these SAG-AFTRA cult members to have, considering that Hoyoverse is not a union company. None of their games are union. So if we're following SAG-AFTRA's cherished Global Rule 1, which says you can't work on non-union projects, Corinna is not supposed to be working on the game at all, even before this. Corinna and all the other members of SAG-AFTRA should not be working on Hoyoverse titles. And if it's about AI protections, which it's really not about AI protections, Hoyoverse pays voice acting studios, which then pay the voice actors that work on their games. And studios that Hoyoverse hires to find English voice actors, like Sound Cadence, have their own explicit AI protections. They released this document in March on their X page, which says every contract at our studio features explicit AI protections regardless of union status. And even if you're one of the VAs who works with another studio like Side, there has been zero indication from Hoyoverse that they would replace any VAs with AI. And why would they do that when it would probably just cause fan backlash, sound bad, and they could easily find a voice actor who would be willing to take a role in Genshin Impact or any of their games. The voice actors aren't employees at Hoyoverse, but it certainly seems like these SAG-AFTRA voice actors want that to be the case, because on top of the AI protections, which is really a front for what they really want. These guys want healthcare coverage, legal protections, and pensions from Hoyoverse. And also, if Hoyoverse signed this interim agreement, it would lock them in where they're only going to be able to hire union talent. And by talent, I mean SAG-AFTRA cult members who will be paid more money and a bunch of benefits for less work, and if you do anything that they don't like, they'll go on a strike again. And Corinna's just been going around retweeting people with pretty terrible takes that are just defending her position, because of course she is. There was this post made by Not Reflection that said, "After learning more about the Hoyo strike, I actually have no issue with these recasts anymore. The voice actors are sabotaging themselves purely out of greed, selfishness, and stupidity. In fact, I hope the rest who are striking get replaced quickly too, so this can be over with. I wish the new voice actors well and look forward to hearing them in game." Then this guy enters the convo caping for the union VAs, saying, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Y'all talk about these VAs like you know them personally, and you don't. Greed? Selfishness? Get the heck out of here." I mean, was the post that person made wrong? I don't think it was at all. Greed. They think that they deserve to be paid way more money for the same voice acting roles that all the other people from all the other regions are doing. They also think that despite not being full-time employees at this company, they're just people that voice their specific character, that for some reason they should be treated like full-time employees and get healthcare benefits and pensions from Hoyoverse. Selfishness. If Hoyoverse were to actually go union, they would only be able to hire union people, which means all the non-union voice actors who would want an opportunity to voice in the game would not be able to do so. And also, we could take a look at how they attack Jacob Takanashi for taking the Kinnich recast, when he is a man that lives in Japan and has a kid to feed, and he has zero reason to care about the SAG-AFTRA strike at all. So yes, greed and selfishness sounds like a pretty apt descriptor of these union VAs to me. And then there's more posts like this by the union defenders just pulling stuff out of their rear end, where they keep trying to make this false point that Hoyoverse is going to replace voice actors with AI, which is obviously not going to happen. They wouldn't be hiring Sound Cadence, which is anti-AI, if they wanted to do something like that. And what would be the point of doing so in the first place? There's so many people who would take the opportunity to voice a character in a Hoyoverse game. It would be great exposure for them and boost their career. So Hoyoverse will always be able to find somebody to voice a character, and that person will probably not be as insufferable as these union VAs, so they have no reason to go and use AI instead. And then Corinna replies with this garbage saying, "Also, unions can't make monopolies," reposting this false description of what a monopoly is. This guy says it's a corporation that has such control of an industry that consumers have no alternative for those goods or services. A workforce cannot be monopolized. The actual definition of a monopoly is the exclusive possession or control of the supply or trade in a commodity or service, or alternatively, a single seller or producer that dominates an industry. So if you were a game studio and you wanted to cast some voice actors and you could only choose from SAG-AFTRA union voice actors, that would by definition make SAG-AFTRA a monopoly over the voice acting industry. But of course, and this is great news for all of us, SAG-AFTRA doesn't have that power, and it looks like sooner rather than later, all of these union VAs that have been striking are going to be recast, and we're not going to have to deal with any of this nonsense going on with the Hoyoverse games anymore. I agreed with this tweet here that said, "I think you're better suited for writing fan fictions than voice acting, because everything you have said has already been debunked with evidence. Don't expect Hoyo to inform you when you were recasted. Have a good day." Going back to this Blue Sky post Corinna made after the interview, she said her contract was being broken again and again from them not paying me on time on a consistent basis, not being paid within the 30 days as my contract states, waiting anywhere from 3 to 5 months on average for my paychecks. This is why contracts mean nothing if the game isn't union, because the contracts are not enforceable without a union. Hoyo still refuses to sign an AI protection contract, and even if they did, since my contract and several of my castmates' contracts are broken on a regular basis, this is why we need SAG. Because without SAG, these companies know that we do not have the money to fight them in court, as most of us, including myself, already live paycheck to paycheck. What an interesting individual. So you're living paycheck to paycheck, but Hoyoverse gave you one of the most stable positions in all of Genshin Impact, which is voicing Paimon, a character whose job it is to travel around all the continents and annoy the traveler. She's going to be voiced in every single patch, and you're going to throw that away because you think that you and other VAs can bully Hoyoverse into signing a terrible contract for them, but they're never going to sign that contract, and it's just going to end up with you not having any money after they go ahead and recast you with somebody else for Paimon. And it's just hilarious to think about on so many different levels. Like, with all the members of SAG-AFTRA, how many millions are they raking in with all of those $3,000 fees? There's somebody at the top, maybe a group of people who are just rich from running this union. They're probably laughing on a yacht yacht somewhere, while clowns like Corinna Butker and some of these other SAG VAs are just over here striking, being the little foot soldiers for this union that they pay a $3,000 fee to be able to have the honor to be a part of. And in the end, the only thing that they're going to accomplish is losing the positions that they had. So going from having something to having nothing. And then Hoyoverse, who's obviously not going to give in to these unreasonable demands, they're just going to go to the UK. They're going to go somewhere else, Australia, and find VAs from there. And by the way, just for anybody who doesn't know, the payment issues that Corinna is talking about don't have anything to do with Hoyoverse. Hoyoverse pays the studio, which is then supposed to pay the voice actors. Hoyoverse also got her transferred to a different studio when they found out that that studio was not paying Corinna on time. Even saying back then, it is not their fault that they didn't know sooner. There are things that I can't talk about that was the reason why it was that way, but it is not Hoyoverse's fault. So why did she change her tune? Why would it matter now that Hoyoverse is union when it comes to making sure that she's paid on time, when the only reason she got paid on time is because Hoyoverse recognized that she wasn't getting paid and made sure that they did everything they needed to do to fix that. So when she says the company needs to be union so that she can make sure she's paid on time, she's lying. If the studio that Corinna was working with, in this case Formosa, is responsible for not paying her on time, that has nothing to do with Hoyoverse. And Hoyoverse, the non-union company, back then and now, they were the guys that resolved her not getting paid. I guess it really isn't about getting paid on time. Or about AI protections, for that matter. All of that's a Trojan horse for getting paid way more money, blocking out non-union VAs, and getting a bunch of benefits like pensions and healthcare coverage and legal protections. And that's what the strike is actually about. But again, leave it to Corinna Butker to lie prolifically because she has monetary gain on the line here. This is exactly why I also hope that all of the striking VAs get quickly replaced by some talented voice actors who have nothing to do with the union and are going to actually voice these characters, so all the English players of the game can just enjoy their characters that they're pulling for and actually hear their voices. I mean, I play HSR and I play it in Japanese, but I think it would be very annoying to be playing Genshin Impact and not being able to hear the voices for characters, especially if I pulled for them. But I will definitely boot up Genshin Impact to go listen to what that sounds like whenever Corinna finally gets recast. But that's all I have for this video. If there are any updates, I'll try to cover them. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Supports me in making more content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.